be real. There's no such thing as the perfect anime. Sure, a lot of anime are very good, but One Piece has pacing issues. Bleach has pacing issues, and the Bound arc. JJK doesn't have pacing issues, but it can be really confusing. And Hunter x Hunter will probably never finish. No matter how incredible or beloved an anime can appear to be, there's gonna be at least a couple of problems with it. And Naruto is no exception to that rule. See, I love Naruto, probably more than you. In fact, I love Naruto that I'm sent things like this. I didn't buy this. Things just show up in my mail sometimes. But in order to have a healthy relationship with something you love, you have to be able to acknowledge its flaws. And this applies to a lot more than just media, guys. Unabashed, unrelenting love of something without being able to acknowledge any of its flaws whatsoever leads to a cult-like following. And whether that cult-like following pertain to anime, comics, politics, all of it is bad. And it doesn't matter what or who you love, if you love them so completely and so non-conditionally that you can't look at them as a human or a piece of media any longer and more like a godlike figure, godlike story, it's gonna lead to problems, which is why I make a lot of videos talking about the problems in Naruto. But a lot of people take these videos, me talking about the problems in Naruto, as me dissing on Naruto or me hating Naruto. And neither of those things could be further from the truth. I think acknowledging a manga or an anime's issues and still loving it even after that speaks to a level of love for a piece of media much more than assuming that nothing is wrong and everything that I say is fake and made up. So I genuinely think that my ability to sit here and say that there are sometimes things like plot holes and pacing issues in Naruto actually makes me a bigger lover of the show than people who deny those claims. Because it's easy to love something that you view as perfect. It's harder to love something that you know isn't. And with all of that out of the way, outside of things like pacing issues or plot holes, there are definitely some other issues with Naruto, but we've already done a video talking about plot holes in Naruto, and golly OG, did people get upset about that one. Which is why today I don't want to look at Naruto at a macro scale, but instead micro scale. A micro scale so small it's roughly the size of an eyeball. What do I mean? Well, instead of talking about all of the plot holes from all of the aspects in Naruto today I just want to talk about the Sharingan, and how its inclusion, or at least its evolution throughout Naruto, might have been a mistake. That is to say that there's almost nothing in Naruto as inconsistent as the Sharingan. However, at the same time, to satiate the naysayers, I also want to cover things about the Sharingan that make sense, but a lot of people don't understand. Because I frequently have my email filled up with questions about the Sharingan, and it's the same questions over and over and over again. Differently worded and slightly different variations, but still the same question. And a lot of people believe that the answer to this question is, it's a plot hole, when in actuality, the answer to a couple of these questions is explained in Naruto. So today I'm wearing two caps. My first cap being there are more things wrong with Naruto than you think, and my other cap being Naruto is actually more nuanced than you think. Does that sound hypocritical to you? It shouldn't, because if you were listening to the last 2 minutes of this video, you could acknowledge something is incredible while also acknowledging its flaws. So sit back and relax, because today we're talking, was the Sharingan a mistake? But before we get to talking about anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you like the idea of me breaking down your other favorite anime, guys, please go ahead and follow my other channel, The Weeb Commander, where instead of talking about Naruto and Boruto, I talk all other anime. And if you just like the idea of me talking about anime, Naruto and Boruto very much included, you're gonna love my anime podcast, Otaku's Anonymous, where me and Danny Mata break down everything that happened in anime this week. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And if you guys want to find another way to support me while also looking like one of the coolest weebs on the planet, let me get this terrible merch off. You guys can head to my brand new merch store and get some of the comfiest and coolest anime merch in the world. Yeah, we got crew necks with nice Otaku's Anonymous front graphics, but guess what's on the back of this crew neck? Well, if you guessed the anti-Sasuke Naruto club, then you'd be right. The Sharingan, one of the most important, if not the most important ability in all of Naruto. A clan-specific dojutsu passed down through the Uchihas by the original inheritor of them, Indra, which I guess technically, if you're taking filler into account, the original inheritor of the Sharingan was actually Hagoromo. All that matters is that for thousands of years, a full millennia, the Uchiha clan has been passing down the Sharingan generation to generation. And generation after generation, the Sharingan alone was enough to make the Uchiha clan one of the most formidable clans on Earth, which they had to be in order to battle against the likes of the Senju clan, their eternal rivals. And because the Uchiha clan ended up in Konoha after making a truce with the Senju clan, the Sharingan is also baked into the history of Konoha. The Sharingan's abilities have led to things like Madara's revival, the extermination of the entirety of the Uchiha clan, Danzo being able to give himself 17 lives, Obito rewriting reality to allow him to beat Konan in a battle, and so much more. If anything in Naruto isn't tied to Hashirama's cells, it's tied to the Sharingan. But much in the same capacity that Hashirama's cells were used somewhat as a crush by Masashi Kishimoto to make sure that any plot point that didn't make sense previously now made sense, I'd argue that the Sharingan is used in a very similar capacity. That is to say that it feels as though the idea of the Sharingan is constantly having all of the rules that were previously set for it broken. See, Hashirama's cells in the beginning of the Naruto universe were simply able to give people like Yamato the ability to use wood release. However, slowly but surely, Hashirama's cells accomplished so much more than that. They were able to keep people like Obito alive. They were able to make White Zetsu. They were able to make Madara awaken the Rinnegan. They were able to give Madara Hashirama's Sage Mode, and so on and so forth. Every single time that Hashirama's cells needed to pull off something different, they simply did. And while obviously that could speak to the versatility of Hashirama's cells and speak to how powerful he must have been when he was alive, finding the same way to solve every single problem, like you're slapping Flex Seal on a hole drilled in the bottom of a boat, kind of feels like lazy writing. And unfortunately, in the circumstance of the Sharingan, it's not that much different from Hashirama's cells. Pretty much every single time that a Sharingan breaks one of the rules that we originally believed the Sharingan to abide by, we kind of, as fans, just had to shrug our shoulders and go, huh, guess that's how they work now. And there are a lot of really good examples of a Sharingan just not playing by the rules that we originally laid out for them. The first and possibly most famous time that a Sharingan broke the rules that were laid out for it is when Madara uses Susanoo with no eyes. Here's the thing. This is one of the most hotly debated topics in the entirety of the Naruto fandom. Should Madara have been able to use a Susanoo? Should Madara have not been able to use a Susanoo? Is that people that have only ever had access to one MS, like Kakashi, Obito, and Shin Uchiha, did not have Susanoo. And therefore, if they, with only one MS, weren't able to access a Susanoo, why is Madara, with no MS, able to access a Susanoo? And now the answer on the other side, that Madara is supposed to be able to use a Susanoo, isn't actually even an answer based from the Naruto manga. Well, there's a couple of points that they use, but we'll cover those in a second. Really, the argument behind Madara being able to use a Susanoo with no eyes is the parable of Izanagi washing his face in the river and creating Amaterasu, Tsukiyomi, and Susanoo. See, in this story, Izanagi, one of the progenitor deities of Shinto lore, is washing his face in a river, and while he's washing his face in the river, from his left eye comes Amaterasu, his right eye Tsukiyomi, and his nose comes Susanoo, which Kishimoto used as the foundation for the MS abilities. That is to say that somebody is able to awaken separate abilities in each eye, and once they awaken both eyes, they can awaken their Susanoo, whose form is actually based off of an ancient Japanese yokai known as Tengu, who historically have very long, hooked noses, which is probably a reference to Susanoo coming from Izanagi's nose, as Kishimoto chose to base the concept of Susanoo based off something from Japanese mythology with a very iconic nose. Outside of this, it's stated loosely in the Naruto manga that after somebody unlocks both of their MS, they gain access to the Susanoo, and that more or less is used as concrete evidence that after you unlock a dual MS, you can use a Susanoo no matter how many eyeballs you have. Now, is the wording in the Naruto manga, you need to unlock dual MS and then it doesn't matter if you lose your eyeballs, you'll always have access to the Susanoo? No. The wording is, after unlocking a dual MS, you get access to the Susanoo. But this isn't the only time in Naruto that the abilities of a lost Sharingan have stuck around. See, while Madara using a Susanoo with no eyes is one of the most talked about things in the Naruto fandom, it's not the only circumstance of something like this happening. See, obviously, Sasuke and Boruto, up until his eye was stabbed, was able to use the Susanoo. He very suspiciously, since he had his eyeball stabbed, hasn't used any iteration of the Susanoo yet, but he did do something very interesting the moment after he was stabbed in his 6-Tome Rinnegan. So obviously, as the majority of us should know, Sasuke gained a 6-Tome Rinnegan in the war. Now, what's interesting about a 6-Tome Rinnegan is that obviously it gave him all of the abilities of the Rinnegan, but it also allowed for Sasuke to maintain all of his Sharingan abilities, while also giving him some unique new abilities that no no other Rinnegan user had before him, like Heavenly Hand Power. And this is because the 6-Tome Rinnegan is only 3 Tome away from being a Rinne Sharingan, and therefore at that moment was probably the second most powerful dojutsu ever. Both the Tenseigan and the Jogan are probably more powerful than a 6-Tome Rinnegan, but that doesn't mean that this eye isn't incredibly strong. Being able to use a Rinnegan and Sharingan abilities from the same eye is crazy, especially when you consider the fact that people like Madara, who went from a Sharingan to a Rinnegan after being reincarnated, had to switch between his Sharingan and his Rinnegan to use their respective abilities. Even characters like Orishiki and the rest of the Otsutskis have to switch between eyes to use separate eyes' abilities. So having an eye that has the abilities of 2 separate eyes, kind of crazy. Now, what a lot of you may or may not know is that Sasuke's left eye ability, the eye that got the 6-Tome Rinnegan, was Amaterasu, while his right eye ability is Kagutsuchi. Amaterasu is the ability to make black flames, Kagutsuchi is the ability to control them. And this is just the way that for a long time, eyes in the Uchihas worked. If you manifested a Mangekyo Sharingan, you would get one ability in one eye and another ability in the other, with the only real exceptions to this rule being Obito, kind of, and Shisui, maybe. See, because obviously Obito has Kamui in both eyes, but the Kamui are supposed to work in separate ways, and we'll actually get into that in a second. And while obviously Shisui had Kodo Amatsukame in both eyes, a lot of people hypothesized, Swag Kage included, that the Kodo Amatsukame in each of Shisui's eyes worked differently from each other. That is to say that they both had the ability to brainwash somebody, but they worked at differing levels of strength with differing cooldowns. And therefore Itachi got the stronger of the Kodo Matsukame eyes, while Danzo got the weaker. And Obito's Kamui eyes are supposed to have separate abilities in that one of the eyes can Kamui parts of yourself into the Kamui dimension, while the other eye can Kamui things outside of your body into the Kamui dimension. So in essence, you're supposed to have different abilities in each eye, which was dangerous for Sasuke, because when you think about it, Sasuke has an ability to create flames and an ability to control flames. So if hypothetically Sasuke lost the ability to make flames, Kagutsuchi also becomes useless. And considering the fact that Sasuke was stabbed in his 6-Tome Rinnegan, his Amaterasu eye, in that moment he hypothetically should have lost access to Amaterasu, and therefore access to basically all MS abilities. However, immediately after being stabbed in the 6-Tome Rinnegan, Sasuke uses Amaterasu, which is interesting because supposedly he's lost all access to all of his 6-Tome Rinnegan abilities. However, if a 6-Tome Rinnegan is supposed to be the melding of a Rinnegan and a Sharingan that gives you the abilities of both eyes, how could he only lose things like portals and Rinnegan abilities, but not Amaterasu? Now, the kind of answer here is that he uses Amaterasu with his other eye, his Kagutsuchi eye. Now, this can possibly be explained away in 2 separate ways. One, the 6-Tome Rinnegan works weirdly, and it allows you to switch your MS abilities between each eye, or that dual MS wielders are able to use either ability from either eye, or 2, Kagutsuchi is more than just the controlling of black flames, but it also still allows for flames to be made from this eye. But neither of these explanations are great. Sure, let's say hypothetically that once you get 2 MSs, you get to use either ability in either eye. That would kind of go directly off the parable that the MS is based off of. You know, Izanagi washing his face and getting a different god from each eye. And genuinely, it would raise a fair amount of questions. Like, why did Itachi always use Tsukiyomi and Amaterasu from the same eye if he could switch them up? If Itachi was using one MS ability more than he was using the other, why wouldn't he switch eyes to make sure that he didn't go fully blind? As we all know that blindness is very much something that Itachi was dealing with. And sure, maybe hypothetically he used both of his MS abilities equally, and he was going equally blind in both eyes. But sure, let's ignore Itachi for a second and focus on other characters with MSs, like Obito and Kakashi, because their Sharingan are just as contentious, if not more contentious, than Sasuke or Madara's. See, because in the 4th data book, we got an entry about Kamui as an ability. And in this data book entry, it said that there are slight differences between the left and right eye. It states that the left eye hurls objects into the Kamui dimension by fixating on them, while the right eye subconsciously slips body parts into the Kamui dimension to avoid contact. The data book stated very clearly that these 2 eyes have different abilities. And yet, in chapter 608 of the manga, when Obito tosses Kakashi into the Kamui dimension, Kakashi is able to use his Kamui to get out of the Kamui dimension. At which point Obito says, "Oh, so you made it out. Must be because we share the same eye." So in that moment, Kakashi and Obito's eyes did somewhat similar things, in that Kakashi was able to teleport himself out, of the Kamui dimension. And this isn't the only time that Kakashi's eye does this, as Kakashi has his eyeball plucked out of his face by Madara, who's just zooming past, and in a matter of seconds, Madara pops the Kamui eye into his face and uses Kakashi's Kamui eye to send himself into the Kamui dimension. So how do we look at these moments? Do we just in the war arc go, I guess Kakashi and Obito had the same abilities as each other this entire time and just didn't know it? That is to say that this entire time, Obito could have been Kamuing things that were far away from him, and this entire time, Kakashi could have had intangibility? Or do we go, that's probably a plot hole? Because, well, obviously you can sit here and be like,
oh, Kakashi just probably didn't figure out he had intangibility, and because the other Kamui eye works subconsciously, Obito never thought to use it on things outside of his own body.
That's silly. You're telling me these super genius ninjas who somehow both came to the same conclusion on what their MS ability was called, which is a whole other barrel of monkeys, mastered one application of this Kamui without realizing they could do an entire another application of the Kamui that would double their strength? I mean, these are two of the smartest people in Naruto, point blank period. Genuinely, for this moment, the only explanation I would take is that maybe after Obito and Kakashi's Kamui sunk together through their battles throughout the Fourth Great Shinobi World's War, that they began to pick up on each other's abilities, as not only is Kakashi's long-range Kamui attempt on the Ten Tails nullified by White Mask Obito, but also after his mask is broken, Obito uses Kamui on himself and Kakashi to pull them both into the Kamui dimension. So maybe because of these experiences, somehow Kakashi picked up the ability to use the other side of Kamui, but that is thin at best. But it's still 3 times that an MSI was used using the wrong MS ability. So who do we believe here? The conventional knowledge that we've been taught throughout the entirety of Naruto claiming that different eyes had different abilities, or a handful of incidences that seem to speak towards the opposite? But we're not done with Obito or Kakashi. See, Obito, while he was still Toby, is frequently seen using his Kamui ability with his base Sharingan. And I mean commonly, like every single time we see Obito use Kamui before he takes his mask off, it's while his base Sharingan is active. And while a lot of people might be like, oh, it's just a drawing issue, or maybe he's activating Kamui and deactivating it faster than we can possibly see. But no, because A, it's every single time he uses Kamui before he takes his mask off, and B, there is quite literally a scene where he is battling against Might Guy, and Might Guy swings a nunchuck through his eyeball, which is the base Sharingan. So what's going on here? Now, obviously, narratively, we couldn't see the MS Kamui because the second that we saw it, we'd be like, Obito. But that doesn't explain away the plot hole. It's like I can explain to you why Jiraiya wasn't brought back during the Fourth Great Shinobi World War. That doesn't explain how nobody found his body when it was very clearly found in Boruto. So how is Obito using his MS ability without activating his MS in the first place? This raises the very logical question, why does anybody activate their MS in the first place if they don't need to in order to pull off their MS ability? It takes a second for that eye to boot up, and the second that the eye boots up, everybody knows you're either trying to fire Amaterasu or put me in the Tsukiyomi rail. Now, there is also a possible explanation for this one, and that is, in the 4th data book, it states that the right eye subconsciously slips parts of the body into the Kamui dimension. But here's the thing. If the right eye in base form can subconsciously slip parts of your body into the Kamui dimension, and if we're assuming now that both MSs are able to manifest the abilities of both eyes, why wouldn't Kakashi's eye do this? Is the right eye the only one that gets a subconscious ability? You can see where the problems start to pile up here, but maybe that is the answer. Maybe the right eye is the only eye that gets the subconscious ability to slip parts of the body into the Kamui dimension, while the left eye is the only eye with the ability to fixate on things from far away and throw them into the Kamui dimension. But this still doesn't explain why Obito is able to use his MS abilities without the activation of his MS, outside of the fact that if you just have this eye's base form, popping it into your head activates a subconscious ability for you not to be hit. But that would technically mean that the left Kamui eye is constantly activated, meaning anybody without a massive healing factor was gonna go blind in a week. And if Obito is able to use his subconscious ability to make himself intangible with his base Sharingan active, why after his mask comes off does he start using the eye in the MS4? But we're not even done with Kamui. See, obviously the big problem with Kamui is that for the majority of Naruto, nobody has both, and therefore neither Obito nor Kakashi is able to manifest a Susanoo. However, towards the end of the story, Obito gets both of the Kamui eyes, but he never manifests a Susanoo because he doesn't have enough chakra left. He was supposed to die twice, after not only having the 10 tails ripped out of him, but also using Rinny Rebirth. So Susanoo really wasn't in the cards for Obito, but you know what was in the cards for Obito? Turning into dust. However, before Obito's soul truly goes to the Pure Lands forever, he decides to give Kakashi the Kamui spiritually. Now, the spiritual Kamui passing is kind of in the form of Obito giving Kakashi his Sage of Six Paths Chakra, or whatever he has left of his Sage of Six Paths Chakra. And because of this, Kakashi's able to use up all of that Sage of Six Paths Chakra until he's out of it, and then the Sharingan are gone forever, which is fine. It doesn't really make sense, and it was never really clearly explained, but fine. Not the worst thing we're going to talk about today. But the weirdest part about all of this is the fact that after Kakashi gets the 2 Kamui, is that he manifests a full-body Susanoo, which, for all intents and purposes, we believe as a fan base, we've never been explicitly told, requires EMS, because the only people that we've ever seen use a perfect Susanoo outside of Indra and Kakashi were wielders of EMSs. Because of this, people like Itachi and Shisui, whether or not you want to believe his Susanoo is canon, were never able to access a perfect Susanoo, one with wings. Now, some people do believe that you're able to access a perfect Susanoo with just an MS. However, by the time that you've gained enough mastery over just an armored Susanoo with a standard MS, you're probably blind, and therefore the only people who have ever had enough time to train with Susanoo enough to achieve a perfect Susanoo are EMS wielders. It doesn't change the fact that the only people that we've seen wield a perfect Susanoo outside of Indra and Kakashi were EMS wielders. And I don't need to explain to you why Indra is an outlier, right? I mean, he's 25% Otsutsuki. He is literally the progenitor of the Uchiha clan. Who was he going to be able to take a Sharingan from? He had to be able to manifest the perfect Susanoo. But Kakashi's not even an Uchiha, and the Kamui he was wielding were not EMS, and there's no way they could be. Obito didn't have any siblings or family members to swap eyes with. Not to mention the acquiring of an EMS doesn't work by swapping eyes. It works by melding eyes. So Kakashi, with just the power of 2 MS, was able to activate a Susanoo when no other MS wielder prior to him was able to do that. Not Itachi, not Shisui. It's weird, but whether or not giving Kakashi a full-body Susanoo was a mistake or not, I think we can all agree that the introduction of concepts like Izanagi and Izanami were mistakes. See, when making a video asking the question of whether or not the Sharingan was a mistake, truly, the strongest, most resounding point I can make is Izanagi and Izanami. Because the moment that Izanagi was introduced into the story, everything in Naruto lost its sense of importance. Oh, Obito's about to die here? Too bad he can reset time, rebuild the body behind Konan, and stab her. Oh, Danzo's gonna battle against Sasuke. Good thing he can rewrite reality 17 times to keep himself in the fight. Now, every single time something goes wrong in Naruto, the question has to be answered, why did nobody use Izanagi? See, because while obviously Izanagi has been depicted to be able to be used in a way where essentially you erase the body that died and replace it with a new body somewhere else that doesn't have an arrow sticking out of its chest. And in this way, Izanagi gives you access to Hagoromo's creation of all things. You can, with the power of chakra, erase the construct you're currently standing in, use your imagination to create a new body, and then give that imagination form. And imagining a shape is yin release, and giving that shape form is yang release, which is why Izanagi is a yin-yang release. Now, technically, the more access that one has to both Indra and Ashura's chakra, the longer they're able to use Izanagi, which is why people like Obito and Danzo, who have access to both Indra and Ashura's chakra, are able to use Izanagi for longer than your standard person. Because I know a lot of people are going to be like,
Oh, Obito and Danzo don't have access to Indra and Ashura's chakra.
they do. Kind of. Well, obviously, they don't have the chakra of the reincarnations. I mean, they both have Hashirama Cell. Their Indra's chakra comes from just having a Sharingan, and thus they have access to Izanagi longer than somebody like Fugaku. And the reason that's terrifying is because Izanagi has been implied to work on more than just your own body, which obviously makes a lot of sense. Izanagi is an exchange of a Sharingan to tap into creation of all things. And creation of all things is reality warping. So hypothetically, anybody with a Sharingan to spare by sacrificing said Sharingan can get access to 30 seconds of reality warping, which makes moments like Sasuke getting stabbed in the eyeball make people ask the question, why didn't he use Izanagi? Why didn't Shin Uchiha use Izanagi? Why did Madara, when he got his back blown out by Black Zetsu, not use Izanagi? Why did Obito, upon being betrayed by Black Zetsu or defeated by the Shinobi Alliance, not use Izanagi? Every single time somebody with a Sharingan gets put in a terrible situation, we now have to ask the question, why don't they use the reality warping ability? And what's worse is that we now know in Boruto that Orochimaru can just whip up Sharingan. And obviously all of the Sharingan that Danzo and Obito collected from the Uchiha Massacre are now presumed to be gone. As we know, at one point or another, Obito had an entire wall of Sharingan in his little lair. However, his little lair was destroyed by Sasuke when he woke up after getting Itachi's eyes, and thus a lot of people believe that all of the Sharingan that were in that lair are now gone. But that genuinely doesn't even matter, because you know who's able to make more Sharingan? Orochimaru. Not only did he make like a myriad of Shin clones who all have 3 Tomei Sharingan, but he also placed a bunch of Sharingan in Shin Uchiha and made him an MS. Which makes us ask the incredibly logical question, why are we using those Sharingans for Izanagi?
Oh, you get the forbidden jutsu because the Sharingan is an incredibly precious thing to the Uchiha. And there was an entire lesson about how they had to use Izanami to stop the Uchiha from using Izanagi so they could accept their fate.
You know, it's clearly not precious. The thing being mass-produced by a snake. I'm sorry, am I insane? Hey man, I know you like having both your eyes, but here, take this one, cover it, and whenever you get into a situation where you're gonna die, just use this one ability. Oh no, you have chakra drain because of the Sharingan in your face? Well, don't worry, whenever you use it in a life or death situation, the chakra drain will go away because the eye will be blind. Listen, Izanami, it's fine. An endless genjutsu loop that requires a bunch of setup, I can live with that. But just sacrificing one eye, which can be mass-produced or stolen from all your comrades, in order to gain reality warping abilities is insane. Also, we could have Obito win in a fight against Konan, which he should have been able to do anyways. Like, hey, Kishimoto, just don't write Obito into a situation where he's about to die so we don't have to introduce a completely asinine ability.
Oh, but Nick, then how does Madara come back to life?
Let's talk about the fact that the Uchiha clan members were able to program Izanagi to go off when they die to bring them back to life? What is this, Nen?
Oh, but Nick, Sasuke didn't have Izanagi activated at the moment that Boruto stabbed him, so he only would be able to remake his body with the destroyed Rinnegan.
Why? Says who? Legitimately says who? You get access to creation of all things. You can build your imagination with chakra.
Oh, but then why wouldn't have Danzo use his last Hisui eye to pull off Izanagi?
Probably because he believed he still had a fair chance in the fight. I mean, that's why he took Karin hostage. Also, he might not have had enough chakra to use Izanagi in the first place. He just lost Hashirama's cell. And because of that, even if he did use Izanagi, it would have lasted 10, 20 seconds max. If there is one problem with this explanation, it is the fact that Obito, after using Izanagi for the first time, doesn't give himself the second arm that he lost in the battle against Konan, which is just so weird. But I am willing to concede that you have to have Izanagi present at the moment of your injury to get your fully healthy body back. Just with the way that Izanagi is explained, that makes no sense. You can make your imagination reality as long as you've imagined exactly what your body is currently. But enough about the negatives revolving around the Sharingan, because there are actually a lot of things about the Sharingan that do make sense that a lot of people don't understand. See, the first of the incredibly common questions that I get is why can't Nagato switch between Rinnegan and Sharingan? Because obviously the Rinnegan in Nagato's face came from Madara, and Madara has the ability to switch between Rinnegan and Sharingan, because Madara started with a Sharingan and awoke a Rinnegan. So why would Nagato, who has the same eyes as Madara, not be able to switch between a Rinnegan and a Sharingan? Well, for the same reason that Kakashi isn't able to deactivate his Sharingan, and the same reason that Ao from the Mist Village isn't able to deactivate his Byakugan. If you're implanted with a dojutsu from a clan you don't belong to, you're not able to deactivate said dojutsu. And in order to switch from a Rinnegan to a Sharingan, Nagato would have to deactivate the Rinnegan. Now, in the case of Sasuke, he doesn't have to deactivate his Rinnegan to get access to his Sharingan abilities. In actuality, Sasuke's 6th Tomei Rinnegan works in kind of the opposite way. See, because Sasuke has the ability to either activate or deactivate the Tomei on his Rinnegan. And by deactivating the Tomei on his Rinnegan, he doesn't have access to a lot of the extra abilities that come with a 6th Tomei Rinnegan. And by deactivating his Tomei, he now just has the standard Rinnegan abilities. But why would Sasuke, who was able to manifest a Rinnegan from a Sharingan, not be able to switch back to a Sharingan? Well, probably because he didn't manifest a regular Rinnegan. Also because he doesn't have Indra and Ashura's chakra. It's just the 6th Tomei Rinnegan was given to him. And thus in a very similar capacity to Kakashi or Ao, he can't deactivate what was given to him. Another question that I get a lot is why couldn't people like Izuna and Madara or Itachi and Sasuke just swap eyes and both get EMS? Which is a pretty good question. I mean, we know that in order to unlock EMS, you need the MS of a family member. So if you had a family member with MS, why wouldn't you just swap eyes? And then you both have eternal access to your Mangekyo Sharingan abilities. However, unfortunately, it's not a swap, it's a meld. Now, this is technically never stated explicitly. However, in the beginning of Itachi and Sasuke's battle, we see one of my favorite scenes in the entirety of Naruto, Itachi stating that Sasuke has his spare eyes. In fact, I have this scene tattooed on my thigh, or at least we're halfway through tattooing it on my thigh. And behind Itachi in this scene is an Oni-like figure with 2 Sharingan, however, the eye slots for 4, implying that Itachi needs to have not only his eyes, but his brother's eyes to fill up the Oni mask and get EMS. This imagery is used once again after Sasuke gets Itachi's eyes. However, his Oni mask has all 4 eyes, thus symbolizing the fact that Sasuke now has 2 sets of eyes that made EMS. And the last question that I get quite often is, why is Obito able to use his MS so often and not lose his sight? And while the answer to this one has also never been explicitly stated, the answer to this question is so widely disseminated, a lot of people think that it's canon. And the answer to the question that I'll give, and basically anybody else on the internet would give, is that because Obito's existing MS eye is on the side of his body that was replaced with white Zetsu, aka Hashirama's cells, healing factor given to that side of his body healed his MS every single time he used it. And therefore, he was able to use his MS more than anybody else in history. But also plot convenience, because Obito wouldn't have been much of a threat if he was only able to use intangibility 15 times. So there you have it. While the Sharingan definitely has moments that make us all scratch our heads, it's also an incredibly cool, nuanced, and kind of misunderstood power. Now, unfortunately, one of the reasons that it's misunderstood is because when it comes down to concrete explanations about the abilities of the Sharingan, we get next to none of those. Which means pretty much all of the evidence that we have to say how the Sharingan works is crowdsourced, and we have to look at moments all throughout the manga and be like,
Huh. Well, it worked this way a couple of times, so that just must be the way that it works.
which isn't a perfect system, but when you have people who dedicate their entire lives to pouring through the source material, like myself and other incredible YouTubers on this app, well, fortunately we can figure out the rules for you. But what do you guys think? Do you believe that the Sharingan is a fair and balanced and well-explained ability, or do you think it has a couple of problems? Tell me in the comments below, and while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. If you yell at me, I'm gonna tell him, and that will make him upset.